Welcome to the Women in Business radio show with Sian Murphy, connecting women in business around the globe.
Hello and welcome into the Women in Business Radio Show studio. So if you were listening during the intro, you would have heard me catch Adelle out. I don't know what she was doing.
I was on her Instagram stories.
Peering at her phone, I don't know.
I was on her stories.
Making her sandwiches in the corner or something. So welcome to the show. Let me tell you who we've got on the show. So our guest today is Randeep Reehal, who is an entrepreneur. Randeep is the only Sikh Indian woman who fully operates a car garage, and she's the CEO and founder of the Pink Garage. She is passionate about developing services exclusively for women motorists and courses and opportunities for young girls and women to have the opportunity to work in the motor trade. So she is not just teaching, she knows about it. She knows about it, and she's running a garage as well. Welcome, Randeep.
Thank you for having me.
It's going to be absolutely a fascinating show. So, Adelle, we've both got cars, haven't we? So,
we do.
I mean, she needs a husk. She's going to be leaving a husk. There'll be nothing left. So, who else have we got in the studio, Adelle?
We have the wonderful, I can't put my teeth in this morning, Adelle Bithri, and she's going to make us look really lovely and sassy, which is what I love, which is the image consultant and personal stylist with the House of Colour of Longfield. So we've got some sass in here.
We have. So Annabelle we're going to be focusing on Annabelle and what Annabelle does in the second part of the show, which is after midday. But Annabelle's going to be in the studio and taking part in the conversation. So I think we better get ourselves started, haven't we? So how can people connect with us, Adelle?
Well, you can connect with us on Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts and Spreaker, and also Alexa when you enable the skill. So do you know what? Everywhere.
Have we got any announcements?
We have locally. We've got obviously heading up for the big show next year, 10th of August.
We should write these down.
No.
We?
We've got our Women in Business big show, 10th of August. But with its listings open, you can start to register now.
Yes.
For the tables. We're going to do things slightly differently next year, aren't we? We're working on that.
Yeah, I'm moving all of the sponsors are all going to be just literally as you come in through the door now.
Yeah.
So
doing some good stuff there.
Yeah, so we're having a shifty around. You see, you'd think in the intervening week, wouldn't you, that we'd actually sort of write down what we had as announcements. I am going to give a shout out to ZC Live, which is run by the amazing Zoe Ken. So that is at Strood Academy. It is next Friday, the 28th of October. I'm going to be there with the Women in Business radio show, and Mark Jennings from Storm Chasers Digital is going to be talking about Google My Business. Google My Business. And there are loads of fantastic speakers as well. So the focus there is on social media. It's about getting leads, but it's a really friendly event. Be really, really good fun. And it'll start at 9 in the morning. So if you want to connect with us and see some fabulous speakers as well, and of course meet Zoe, Strood Academy, ME2 2SX, I think it is. That's not bad.
That's good.
It's not bad for a pensioner, is it?
Not bad at all.
A menopausal pensioner.
Absolutely.
So I think that's about it, isn't it? That's all we've got going on. Well, it should be a quiet week then, shouldn't it?
We've got some projects building, but yeah.
Okie dokie, hang on a minute. Look, nails too long, can't turn the pieces of paper over. So, I think what we're going to do now is have our sort of quick fire round looking at what's been happening this week and what our guests have been doing and all of that sort of thing. So, who are we going to start off with, do you reckon? Come on, do something.
Me?
Yes, do something.
Me?
Do something. What have you been? What have you learnt this week?
What have I learnt this week? I've had a very, very, very busy week, being World Menopause Week, month and day. Do you know what I've learnt this week is I've got a pretty good team of women around me and some amazing supporters. And it's not until you come together and you've got a few wobbles that actually we pulled off a pretty cracking event. So that's the thing I've learnt this week is get a good team around you. Because it really came through this week for me.
What have you learnt this week, Randeep?
Well, I certainly agree with Adelle because it's really important to have a good team around you, and I'm really blessed to have a great team of technicians around me that support my business and support me and my vision. But I also learnt, and I was sharing earlier, was the two ladies that I have training at the minute is how much confidence has elevated in them just by learning. So, knowledge is power.
Yes.
On another level.
Yes, yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Annabelle, have you learned anything this week?
I've learned that on busy days you need to take time off, otherwise you cannot recharge your own batteries and give to anybody else. And just having family around you to help you get that break in sometimes will make a difference as well.
And I've learned this week that sometimes there are things that you just can't change and that you just have to accept them. And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't change them, or you don't want to change them. You
learn from it, though.
Yeah, it could be that you actually don't want to change them because what you need to do, the action that you need to take, maybe perhaps there is a solution, but it's not something that you actually particularly want to do, because there's always a solution, isn't there? Very often. But if that's not the solution, if you don't want to take that route, then you've sort of got to accept it and adapt and make it work for the time being. And that's what I've learnt this week. I think what we need to do is introduce Randeep properly and get a little bit about her story, because you're breaking ground, aren't you? You have broken ground. You're sort of forging ahead. You're creating things that haven't been created before. And I think we need to know why you're doing that, what you're doing and how you're doing it as well. So can you just tell us a little bit about your story? How did you get to where you are now?
I got into it with my dad because we have our family business, and I realised over the years I've been working there, how relieved people feel when they hear me talk on the phone and talk about cars, and how answer their questions confidently. And that's what triggered me to encourage more women into the trade. And it all started off with women understanding about cars, because a lot of the time women come in and they don't know what they're talking about, or their husband sent them down, they feel okay just to, as soon as they see me, it's like they start making sound effects, and this is what my car's doing. And that just goes to show that how much of an impact it makes just having a woman in that knows what she's talking about. And I learnt the job because I wanted to, so I could serve anyone and not be snubbed off that they just want to talk to a mechanic. So that was that encouraged me even more to learn the job and learn what goes on with cars, and so I can explain clearly and people know what they're paying for, and how to get the best motoring experience. So
when you started off down this route, you were working in a garage that was owned and run by your father.
Yep.
And I'm assuming, I may be wrong, but it wasn't called the Pink Garage. No. And so there were well, I don't know, it could be, couldn't it? And there were people coming in who, we'll just call them normal punters.
Yeah.
And there you are, doing what you're doing, booking them in, doing all of this sort of thing. At what point did it flip over to the Pink Garage, or was it a steady process of realisation until you sort of, okay, now this has to turn around? Or is the Pink Garage a new venture and runs alongside the original business?
It's a new venture that runs alongside on the business, but it was a gradual realisation as well. And it got to a stage where we were really struggling with staff. And so I when you said good team, I can't emphasise that enough. And no business can run without a good team. But we went through a period where we just had a high churn, and found it difficult to manage people because of their expectation, and also they realised that we needed them more than they needed us. Yeah. And that for me was the tipping point, whereas I've had enough of this. I'm not going to have these men, make me feel vulnerable as a business owner. But that was the attitude I had when I got divorced. I said, I'm never going to be vulnerable, and I'm never going to be, I'm going to make sure I'm self-sufficient and not a burden, and that carried through, and it had carried through my work. And that's what encouraged me to just snap out of it and say, right, this is it. I'm going to do something that's going to encourage more women into the trade. So we have this good mix in the workshop. We have this understanding of how cars should be maintained, how we should deliver service. Because generally speaking, there isn't enough skills trade anyway, with regardless of whether you go into carpentry, electrician, but the motor trade is really suffering.
Yeah.
I sort of get the sense that, and I may be wrong here, I'm often wrong, but I sort of get the sense that it was, sort of this gradual process of clues, things coming towards you, and that you were looking at the impact, because we now, most of us, we rely on our cars. Our cars are an integral part of our businesses and our lives. And as a woman, and we don't like to focus too much on the show on this is really difficult as a woman. But I think sometimes we don't necessarily. I know nothing about cars, and I'm in that situation where I sort of take it along, and I either ask my husband or I sort of take it along to Tony's my mechanic and go, Tony, it don't work now. So I said, well, I don't know. All right, I'll have a look at it. Now I'm fortunate. I found somebody that I trust. He doesn't turn me over, and doesn't make me feel stupid either. But I've been in a situation where I do feel, okay, here we go. I've got no idea what this bloke's going to be talking about or what he's going to be charging me. And so when you say vulnerable, is that sort of what you mean, that we're at the mercy of because we don't have this information?
Yeah.
Or is it also because, I don't know, I think very often men who are in that sort of mechanic sort of role, they will have a different, is it about a different attitude to a woman going into a garage? Because, if a bloke go, hello, mate, you all right? What's the matter? Oh, I'll have a look at it. It'll be, no, it's the bong things. They've done that. And it's quite a different conversation, isn't it, very often?
Yeah, it is. I think, I understand how some mechanics feel when they see a woman, because their anxiety levels build up as well, because
okay.
they don't want to be seen as coming across rude or wrong, because some people just don't have that awareness about themselves.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot with mechanics, and then having visited garages, and that's just the way they are, that's the way they function, but not everybody has that understanding that's how they function. So they, in terms of communication and and how they interact with you when they're talking about your car. But
I hadn't thought about that actually. So perhaps they get concerned. We make jokes about the mansplaining, but is it that sometimes they worry that actually they're treating us like idiots? When it's just that we don't happen to know about car maintenance. Well, that's all right. They probably don't know how to build websites. But that doesn't mean they're daft.
Yeah, some mechanics are really good at explaining stuff, but some aren't. And I think it's when women come in, as soon as they see me, I see this relief on their face when they're coming towards the reception door, and I'm sitting there or I'm walking around. But when they And I think it also depends on the confidence of the woman as well. So and how you welcome customers in general. And people see garages, it's just a stress zone. You're not going to have a car, you don't know how much it's going to cost, you don't know what you're talking about, all these things.
Actually, yes. Do you know, I hadn't thought about that. It's very rarely, I think if you're going to have it souped up or wrapped or go faster, super fandango wide wheels on it, you very often will take it to a different place, won't you? So that's quite exciting. Yeah. Whereas when you're going in, it's a bit like going to the doctors, isn't it? Possibly nothing stupendously fun is going to come out of you taking your car into the garage.
No. And there's also that anxiety of you don't know what's going to unfold as well. So
yeah.
You've got a mechanic that's thinking, we've got a distressed lady out here, and they're conscious about, and that consciousness can sometimes make them feel nervous. And it's nobody knows how they, their own, I've got to say, I don't know, like...
Just
yeah, they just, some people just lose it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they just don't realise how they come across.
Yeah.
And then you've got an anxious customer, and then if you're not in a good space, then immediately that tension is there. So it's a hospital for cars. Nobody goes to a garage.
Yeah, for fun.
Yeah.
So I suppose straight away, sort of thinking this through, and it's really quite obvious now, but I've never really considered it, is that there's an expert in a field that, should we say, the average woman really has very little understanding of. Trying to explain why something's costing as much as it costs, what needs to be done, and how long it's going to be to take, with somebody who has very little understanding of what they're talking about. It's not actually a fun situation, really, is it?
It's not, and I think because everybody's in panic mode, or the driver is in panic mode, even when you are explaining things properly, and I've had this, it doesn't register.
Yeah.
And then they need someone. Can somebody else come in and have a look at this?
So when you first started, when you first started in the garage, you weren't particularly au fait with the mechanics of everything. You were there, you were sort of admin, supporting, management sort of thing.
Yeah, more like just answer the phone, take a message, and I gradually built up the questions common questions are being asked, and I just built a memory bank of that in my head, because I'll remember that next time. So, when somebody asks me the question, I can confidently ask that. Or if they ask me something technical, I made sure I asked my dad, like, so why does that happen? What does it? And he's very good at explaining stuff, so he...
So what's your mechanical knowledge now?
It's amazing.
So did you... I'm thinking of other businesswomen or potential businesswomen out there who are thinking, actually, do you know... That's something I could do, but I'm not sure. And it could actually be anything, couldn't it? It could be in any area where you don't have any expertise. Is how far do I need to go to actually be able to set up and run this business? So, is your mechanical knowledge now? Is it sort of, have you taken qualifications in it, or is it what you've picked up and it's enough to be able to do what you need to do to manage the business?
It's what I've picked up over the years. I haven't got a qualification.
Okay.
But I made a real effort to really get emotional with the problem with the car, and it sounds strange, but I need to know the ins and outs. Until it doesn't register in my head, I can't then relay that to a client in layman terms. But I picked it up, and I just really, it's not like I felt the car. It sounds strange, but when they explain a problem, I'm a very visual person, so when they're showing me stuff or how things work, I just programmed myself to. I just got it.
I know you've got a point. I just want to sort of clarify this in my own head, because I think what you've just said is a really, really important thing, and I think it's something that I've suffered from before. And I know I've known other women who have also had this as an issue and a delay for setting up and running their business, which is, I must get qualified in it. I don't know enough, so I must do a degree course or a course, something or other that takes an awful long time. In the meantime, you're not actually running your business. You're taking a qualification, when actually what you're saying is, other people can do that. They can get the spanners and the nuts and bolts out, and they can do the oily and technical skilled, because it's a skill with your hands as well, being a mechanic, isn't it? They can do that, but what I needed to do was actually really connect with the problem, and how, and then in order to run the business, how that was making the mechanic feel in their communication, and the customer feel with how they're coming in and their worries and their concerns, and how we help them to understand. So you were able to start running your business, I'm not going to say fast, but an awful lot faster than if you'd have decided to qualify as a mechanic.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and that's what I'm encouraging women to feel, that it's not about, you don't have to get a qualification, and that's why I can teach women how to come into the trade, because even though I haven't been hands-on. I don't know every single nut and bolt in the car. I can't answer every single problem on a car, but generally speaking, the general motoring, I've got a sound experience and understanding of, how you can get the best out of your car. But for me, I bridged that gap between customer and workshop, where I understood the customer's needs, I understood the car problem, and if I could foresee a situation that, the customer's not going to get their car back, or does that mean the car's not going to be drivable now, and is that going to cost more money? I could paint a really good picture to the customer for them to realise, actually, I'm not ready for this yet, or can I reschedule it for another day, or I'll postpone this repair for another month. And all these things have a contributing factor to the experience of working with a garage and running the business as well. So I've got best of both worlds. But no, you don't need a qualification to do what I'm doing to run a business. But obviously, you do need to. You can still learn the job and not have a qualification, but that's something that can come later. And there's so many different ways now that you can get qualifications.
Adele.
I was just picking up on your point at the beginning, and I've written down here triage. So for me, if you go into a hospital, you sort of see the triage nurse first, because you think, I may have hurt something. But what really picked up for me, and it's only because women, when they're sharing their problems with me, is their visual and the noises they make.
Yeah.
All right. So if you think, my car's still making a click noise, and you would get that. So for me, I think that really helps with the way that women communicate visually and through noise, especially with a car. But what I like is I'd written down triage. So when a woman comes in, you said. And again, you went on and said you bridge the gap between the mechanic and the front of and the customer service. Just really that whole triage thing, and then being able to just explain from one to the other. And I think that's absolutely the gap that's missing when, as a woman, you're going in with a guy, but actually he's making clunk noise, and they look at you, really. I really like that approach, of that triage before you get in front of the surgeon, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but the other thing is it's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm educating motorists in general. Like, when you come into a garage and say, my car's making a click noise, when is it actually happening? Is it when you're driving? Is it when you're turning the steering wheel? Is it when you're going over bumps? Is it when you're just standing there? And and you have to really probe those questions as a garage owner or a service manager. So you not only does that make business sense, because now that you've answered all the questions, asked the right questions, you can now. The mechanic can now, he knows straight away, or she knows straight away, how they're going to approach that job, which will save you time and money, rather than, I don't really know, and two people are just not talking to each other. And before you know it, you've escalated a bill that's not necessary.
There's a word that keeps coming up in my mind, which I'm going to come back to in a minute. Annabelle. I
was just going to say, my daughter's recently had experienced that. She was coming home and her check engine light came on, so she rang Dad in a panic. Oh my God, what can I get home? And my husband was fine. You can get home, take it to the garage. And they were really good actually at explaining to her, because she's only 19, it's her first car, at what they thought the possible sensors or proper issues would be. They explained it could be the O2 sensor or the CAT, etc. And they gave her time to actually think about it, and then she came back. Unfortunately, it's turned out to be the CAT, but they actually took the time to explain it to her, and I think that has made a difference to her and her experience with having a garage. Because the first thing she goes, "Mum, can you come with me?" or "Dad, can you come with me?" Because I think they're just going to, talk at me, and I wouldn't know what they're talking about. So I think that has made a difference for her experience, and she won't have a problem now going back there again.
And I think if you look at anybody who serves anybody as if they were your own, you will explain properly. So any woman that comes in, elderly lady or even a dad or whatever, if it was my dad, if it was my mum, if it was my sister, is that how I would do this? And that makes a difference to the service that you deliver. It's not, it's I'm expert, you're customer, and that's it. You just see that gap and not try and bridge it. That's when tension and anxiety comes up. But the advice I give to everybody is just stay calm. I think as soon as you panic, then even if somebody is talking sense, it doesn't make sense.
It all starts to escalate.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I've written down here, and I've written gap twice, okay, and communication, and it seems to me that there was a choice. The choice was to go and qualify as a mechanic and become a mechanic and effectively be self-employed or go and get employed. But what you've done as a businesswoman is identify the communication gap and look at what you could fill to create a business, to attract a particular type of client in. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
So you've applied you've applied some knowledge.
Yeah.
You've expanded on your knowledge as you've going along, and you've looked at actually what is the real problem here. And you as the business owner, you filled it. You haven't looked to do absolutely everything yourself. You've looked to fill the gap. How are you going? Have you got plans to expand on that? Because it's you in there, isn't it? So do you have a substitute you? Do you have somebody who comes in and is
I'm
you?
in the process to clone myself. I think it's the strategy that I have is this. You can learn customer service, but customer service is different in this sort of environment, and so I'm creating courses for anybody who wants to come and work in a trade as a service manager or assistant.
Okay.
With what I've learned in 20 years in a nutshell.
So are you growing your own staff?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Grow my own staff, and so that gap can close, and that's the biggest gap between garage and motorist is the communication of how to explain things and how to understand your client.
So by well, I don't think we can't duplicate you, can we? You're unique. Everybody's unique, but by giving your understanding and your empathy of a situation and your communicate your skills to be able to sort of bridge the gap between the two types of people that are involved here, you can go on and open perhaps another centre and duplicate what you're already doing with more mechanics.
Yeah.
So with more bums, sort of up in the air and arms down on the gearbox.
Yeah, I mean that is my ultimate vision, is to have my own pink garages where we're delivering this service, as well as provide training to existing garages that want to know what I know, to help them soften their communication with their client and how they.
Yes, I mean it seems so obvious. How long did it take you to arrive at that? It's sort of an additional income stream, I suppose, isn't it? It's maximising what you've already got. How long was it before you looked at that and said, actually, here's something else that I can bring in as an additional income stream here, a different way of diversifying what I'm doing?
Probably the last 5 years. I think in the last 5 years it's been that I've got this knowledge. I'm actually in a very strong place, and being my ethnic background of that not many Sikh girls, or I don't think there's any that do what I do, is a way of me attracting more women to my own business and having the opportunity to open more centres.
In fact, that's something that I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, and the relevance of that, because it's something that's in your profile. You're the only Sikh Indian woman who fully operates a car garage. What is the relevance of that? Where does it fit in with your story, and where does it fit in with where you're going now?
I think it fits in because I asked myself the question, like, when I had a lot of people come to me and say, I don't know many Indian girls that do what you do. And that sort of messaging came to me quite a few times, like sales reps or anywhere I went, they would look at me in a funny way, like, okay, what are you doing here? Like, actually, I'm here to pick up a part, or I'm talking about this problem. And then that's when the penny dropped, and I asked myself, why aren't Asian women in this trade? It's because it's not, this trade is, or this career path is not made even at schools.
It's not an automatic
No, it's
thing,
not.
is it?
It's thing, yeah. That okay. You know what? When you grow up, you're going to be a mechanic. Even my dad didn't say that. You know, he had no idea. He wanted me to go down the traditional route of going and having a medical degree. That would have been dangerous. But he, you know, they had their aspirations, but equally they were, you know, they're happy that I'm happy with what I'm doing. But that's where it kicked in, that, you know, I'm going to reach out to the South Asian community, and because there might be women out there that never thought about it, or it never crossed their path, but might want to do it. But there's so much, and I think this is what's the driver for me, is there's so much conditioning, and it's that conditioning I want to break. That's you know, I managed to break it, but then I was fortunate enough that I had my dad in it, and he's a very open-minded man. But there are Indian men that run garages, but you'll never see their daughters, sisters, or mothers, or wives actually be front of house and deal with the general public and be hard-faced about.
So one of the things I was going to ask is, did you overcome any sort of cultural, I want to say, problems or gender problems to sort of go where you're going, or was it just that nobody had ever nobody had ever done it before, and you were getting comments, or were there other things that you had to overcome, you know, that were perhaps holding you back, where you needed to actually go, yeah, okay, this isn't normal, you may not like it, but this is where I'm going?
I didn't have any problems with my parents. I mean, they were grateful that my dad was grateful that he had my support, and he never really questioned what else you can do with your life. You just do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. But I think my mum was a challenge, because in her head, well, Indian girls don't do this.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
Indian girls get married. You know, you need to get a job. It's okay. It's good that you work in a family.
It's nice while you're playing there, yeah.
Yeah, you know, but you have to make sure you come home at 5:30. You can't take your business home. And I love that place so much, and I get so much fulfilment working with my clients, coming up with ideas, and to how I can close that gap even more. And I wouldn't say I sacrificed my relationship over it, but it took the fun out of me. And my mum's obviously very influenced by family and her friends and what their children are doing.
Yeah.
So I had to help her understand, to say, this is my happiness, and this is what I'm doing. And only now, actually, 10 years into me doing what I'm doing, after my relationship breakdown, that she sees my vision, and she's, for a little while she was silently proud, but now she's open about it. She's confident too. She's overcome that barrier in herself, that I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm upskilling women, I'm creating more job opportunities, I'm creating a movement here. But still she'll have people say, when is she going to get a proper job? Like, a proper job is working 9 to 5 in an office environment.
Controlled.
Yeah.
No, in a nice little box.
Yeah.
Where everybody knows where you are and what you're doing.
When is she going to take her life seriously and actually settle down? And because everyone just thinks I'm having a jolly with my dad at work, you know, and that's fine.
You're working for Sweeties.
Yeah. Or my parents are trying to save money on a wage,
Yeah.
on a manager's wage. Like, really? But you know, the three of us have a fantastic relationship, and I'm grateful for them actually just letting me go with it. But I did have, that was a big challenge, and I even had my ex-partner's family scrutinise that, you know, that's why your relationship's not moving on, because you're always thinking about your
It's got nothing to do with him. No, obviously. Adele.
Again, I was going to just pick up on those points. We talk to lots of women, and And when you're doing something that's different, a bit like myself really, and I get as when you're going to get a proper job or you're going to go back to work, etc. And you're immediate because you surround yourself with like-minded people, which is great. And sometimes you might step out where you meet people you don't really know. And that's what I say to you. And sometimes you get the comments and you're like, oh, okay, you know, because you are bucking a trend. And when you're bucking a trend, then there's that whole resilience and remembering actually this is what I do. So, yeah, your immediate people around you, but then maybe extended out, sometimes you can get comments or, you know, it's just having that resilience to just go, yeah, okay, thank you, and move on. I wondered, you know, outside of that wider people you meet and comments like that, how you have just okay, fine, and dug in deep and continued.
Yeah, I mean, people just saw it as, oh, she works with her dad, but they never really took the time to understand what my role was. And even, I remember my ex-partner actually saying that my parents feel quite embarrassed when the people ask them, what does your daughter-in-law do? Well, she's a receptionist at her dad's business. You know, they completely belittled my status.
Did they know?
Yeah.
So they were embarrassed by you being a businesswoman, and so they were happier saying that you were the receptionist. Not that there's anything wrong with being the receptionist, but I just want to understand, that's what they would say, because that was okay, whereas running a business was embarrassing.
I don't think it was so much running the business. They were like, you don't actually have a
label job. A label.
Like,
a reception's a label.
You're not a managing director. You're not some assistant or officer or whatever.
You're not employed.
You're not employed. Yeah, you're just working for your dad. And obviously, he was in the corporate world, and so people think, well, I've done university too. So if she's done a degree, why isn't she working in the corporate world? You know, so she hasn't got a label job. So she's just her dad.
How did you... I think there's a number of ways of reacting to that sort of thing, isn't there? You can defend it. You can open your trap and you can start defending it. You can... I don't know. You can... What did you do? Just
I put it on a scorecard. Another reason why I should get out of this relationship.
I like it. We love a scorecard.
I had a scorecard, right? He said this about my dad. He said this about my business.
Right, okay.
Right, now his parents feel embarrassed. Well, when I get to the 5th strike, I'm out.
Love it, my style.
Was it? I sort of get the sense that you got this sort of, what shall we call it, resistance and little digs from other places as well. It's just that perhaps this is a little closer to home. But what did you say is there anything that you said to yourself? I'm asking this specifically because I, and much like Adelle, come across so many women who, even just by setting up a business, and it could be, I've known it with people setting up, I'm going to call it a little body shop business, but it's a business that they're running from their kitchen table, and they've just stepped very slightly over the boundary that other people have set for them, which is okay. And they've taken a step to have a little bit of independence, and it's scary.
Yeah.
For the other people. And so they start trying to put them in boxes. And little digs and pokes and jibes. How did you because you're still here, so what did you do? Was there something you said to yourself? Was there a way that you behaved where you just get moving forwards?
My why and my purpose is my dad. I stayed in what I was doing because I wanted to prove, again, I say prove, but I wanted him to feel that he had nothing to worry about, in a sense, because I don't have a brother, and there's just 4 girls, so, and he got stitched up quite a few times with employees in business, so for me, it was like, no, this is my dad, I'm going to stand behind my dad, and I'm going to do this. That's how it started off, and it's still the same reason, but for me, it was, I was very passionate about, I'm doing it because I'm almost the big brother, the guardian of my whole family. So that was the reason that kept me pushing. And it's none of anybody's business. And in fact, I always remember what my dad says, well, look, at the end of the day, it's, these people aren't making you happy. So it's, if I don't have an issue with it, and I'm your dad. Why should you let anybody else bother you with it? And those small nuggets of encouragement from him, and also wanting global domination of getting more women into the trade.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the global domination thing, isn't it?
yeah. It's not just in Uxbridge. It's all over the world. Watch this space. That, you know, I felt like I want to make this difference. You know, I want to prove that, you know, just because you're Indian, you have to live in this box. You know, and when I think about who I was when I was married, I was, you know, my box was, oh wow, I'm getting married and I'm going to be a daughter-in-law and a wife for the rest of my life, and a mum. And there's nothing wrong with that. But because I didn't have any other influence, it was just my cousins, and they all did the right things. It was hard for me to even make that decision that I want to separate from my relationship, and I sat on that for years. But when I realised actually people don't check in with their happiness, and sometimes what's going on around you can overwhelm you to not take that step. But you only live once, and you only have one life, and you have to be happy. And anybody that comes to work with me, if you're not happy in what you're doing, if you're just coming into my garage to just do a job, then turn around. If you're coming to do this job because you love pulling cars apart, you're passionate about, you know, challenges and thinking outside the box and how you can serve, then you're more than welcome to continue working with me. Because 90% of your life you're working, and you've got to love what you do. And for me, it was like I love what I do, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So I held on to that feeling of having it, that kept me going through it.
And I'm going to ask you some different questions in a moment. I just sort of want to round up on that bit. It seems to me as though some of the biggest challenges that you had, or some of the things that you had to deal with, was actually what other people were saying. It wasn't real. I say real because it's not. Somebody else's opinion isn't real. It's not something broken out in the real world that you have to mend.
Yeah, and it's a story you tell yourself. If you tell yourself that story, that I'm good at what I do and I love what I do and I'm going to do it, that story will be reality. And people who go out of their way to, you know, sort of snub their nose, like, well, you don't want to carry on doing that. Do you really want to carry on working in a garage? Like, that's not really a job, is it? And so these are stories that you're being told, but it's how you
if you let the worm into your ear,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So some of the things that you've already sort of told us, and I just want to expand on some of that. So we asked you, what business tip did you believe, follow or share that turned out to be total rubbish? And you said that the customer is always right. Have you got... So I see that as I get that, I do. Yeah. But I also see that as where we've been talking before about how it's very customer focused and everything that you do. How do you marry those two things together? Because I think that's something that a lot of people have trouble with, and very often approach their business with this. Well, the customer is always right. So what's your take on it?
They're not, because I had a disgruntled customer yesterday, so it's quite raw. And I don't think he was right, but that's his conditioning. You know? He never read any of my emails. He never took the time to understand anything that I said to him. And, you know, he was sold a van that had pre-existing problems, and the seller wasn't looking after him. And he had the rights to go back and get his money.
And somehow that became your problem.
It became my problem.
Right, okay. Even though you didn't sell him the van.
Didn't sell him
no.
He wanted me to fix it, but I gave him a price and he didn't like my price. So
oh dear.
It was okay for him to, you know, he came in macho, telling me to, you know, saying all sorts to me, and I thought, well, it's much easier coming into a room and shouting at a woman than it is going back to that seller and say, can I have my money back? So, you know, the customer isn't always right, because they don't have enough knowledge to know what you know. And if you provided a service where you were transparent and you did everything you could, and that person doesn't see that, then they're not right. And you don't want those customers.
I think that's that's the other thing, isn't it? So no.
Sometimes you attract them, but, you know. When you start talking to a customer, you can very quickly know that that person's not right. That customer's not in line with who you are and what you're.
In fact, they're not actually customers at that point, are they? They're potential customers.
Yeah.
So sort of what you're saying is actually, you know, they're not always right. They're not always the right customer. It's not that they're not always right. They may not be the right alignment for what you're doing.
Perception, like you could argue a point. I think I'm right because this is how I see it, and they say no, this is why I'm right because that's how I see it. But that doesn't mean as a business you give into that.
And that, I think, is one of the things that we so often see, because, you know, working with a lot of women, is that very often when they're challenged on price, they will drop the price. Automatically assume that there's something, you know. Oh, okay.
No,
well,
shut the door.
I always say silence. You know, so if I tell somebody this is how much it is, I say nothing at all, because I don't know what they're thinking. They might be thinking, oh, have I got enough money in the account to pay for that? Or I wonder if I can pay it over, 3 months or something. They don't always have to be thinking, hey, that's too much. But when they do, that's fine. It's too much. Okay, that's all right. You may be able to find somebody who will do it cheaper.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, yeah.
Toodle pip.
Had to make a massive performance about it yesterday.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does affect you. You think, you know what, I worked so hard and I didn't need that, but it happens. But yeah, I don't believe the customer's always right, because it's what they believe, and if that's what you believe, find a garage that is in line with what you believe.
And go and do that. Yeah. Now the other thing, we also ask you, what is your biggest failure? And you have said not following up and through. So what does that mean for you, not following up and through? I know what it means for me. That means a lot for me.
I think I would be. Obviously, I'm a people pleaser, so I love to. Yes, I'll do it. And it could be I'll be sitting on an estimate. It could be that there was an opportunity that came through the door. Like somebody says, I work at a local school. Give me your business card or make me a flyer, and I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I've got excited about the opportunity, and then suddenly I just slump, and then I wouldn't say slump. I get sidetracked with the everyday operations. But I think that was a lot to do with my own conditioning and my own awareness. So I've got a team now, so I haven't got an excuse. I have to follow through. But
or say no.
Or say no, yeah. But I because I was wearing so many hats for so many years, I never followed through. But then I didn't have that understanding and awareness of time management, or what can I sacrifice. And when you're going through a difficult time in your business, you can't think outside the box. So you just think you're in it, and that's it. You're stuck.
Yeah, it's difficult to take a step back and go above it and look, isn't it? Look, we're coming to the end of the show. We have got a few more minutes left, but I don't want to forget. How can people contact you? So, from what I can hear, they can contact you because they need their car repaired, or they want they want some advice and some preventative stuff. Also, because it may be them, or they may have somebody that they know who would like to train with you as a woman moving into that trade. Or it could be that they're the owner of a garage who wants to have perhaps a relationship with a new set of clients, or to have a better relationship with their existing clients. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So anybody knows that once has considered the trade, whether it's a woman or a young person, I'm more than happy to speak to them, to advise them. It doesn't have to be fixing cars. If there's any other part of the trade, I've got lots of female connections that are in the trade that are prepared to give advice and support.
So how can they contact you?
They can email me at info@pinkgarage.co.uk, or they can visit my website. That's thepinkgarage.co.uk, and then just put in your request, or they can follow me and direct message me on the Instagram portal at Pink Garage Company.
and we're going to finish off on what is your top tip for being in business?
Top tip. Feel happy. I think you've got to, regardless of what happens, business is business, people are people, supplies, everything, that's just life. But the one tip to give anybody is check in with yourself and just keep up your happiness within yourself. Like, protect yourself from, build up your emotional resilience and stay happy, because that's what helps you get through difficult times.
Very wise words from somebody who has walked the walk, but I've not finished with you yet. You thought it was time to go, didn't you? It's not. What do you know now that you wish you'd have known when you started out?
Wow, okay. What do I know now? Stay focused, because I didn't stay focused. I didn't. Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. It sounds very simple, but stay focused on what you want to achieve. And take what I know now. Actually, I know I say stay focused, but I have spent a lot of money and time with people in personal investment into personal development. If I had known that 10 years ago, I would be miles ahead of the game of where I am now. So I would recommend anybody is take the time to personally invest yourself, get a good coach, get good mentoring. I think it's required every step of the way. But if I know what I knew now, then I'd be global. I would be global 5 years ago. But yeah, it's never too late.
It's never too late. Randeep Reehal, so founder of the Pink Garage, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for sharing your business acumen, and for encouraging women to go into something a slightly different trade. And also in the studio we had Adelle, who is with House of Colour Longfield, and we're going to be catching up with Annabelle in a different show. Thank you. Should we say goodbye?
We can say goodbye. Yep.
So goodbye from Adelle and goodbye from me, and we will see you all very soon.
Tune in next week to the Women in Business radio show for more stories, ideas and inspiration to help you grow your business.